Everyone, great to see you here at the Employer Branding Summit. And friends and partners, employer branding experts and experienced professionals, welcome to the third edition of Employer Branding Summit hosted by Oddwork. My name is Charles Sinclair. I'm head of employer branding here at Oddwork, and together with my friends, colleagues, and inspirations, Daniela Raven and Poyan Karimi, we look forward to guide you through 120 minutes of inspiration and hands-on knowledge from some of the most proficient and influential employer branding experts that we have ever had the favor to come across. And although they do say that the third time's a charm, the journey with the Employer Branding Summit has been quite charming from the very start, hasn't it, Poyan?
Indeed it has, Charlie. We launched Employer Branding Summit in the lovely spring of 2020. You know, nothing else was really going on at the time, so we figured, why not? Did you guys notice anything special happening during the spring of 2020?
No, boring.
No.
Boring.
No, boring.
Nothing.
It was. We're an employer branding company, transforming our partners' employer brands with one clear goal in mind: to attract, recruit, and retain their talents in the best possible way in today's competitive talent market. Last year, we, like you, literally saw the talent market change rapidly right in front of us. And the shift itself was not necessarily unexpected. We and our forward-thinking partners had seen changes coming for a good couple of years, with a new generation of talent entering the talent market, but suddenly it all accelerated at incredible speed. Suddenly there were no offices to facilitate the company's culture anymore. Suddenly a remote global talent market opened up for the most proactive work from anywhere employers. And up until this day, a lot is still shifting in regards to how we're able to attract, recruit, and retain our workforce. Throughout this change, we've received great questions and perspectives and ideas from our employer branding partners. So we figured, let's invite some of the greatest minds that we can find in our network to discuss the current and the future state of the employer branding industry. Said and done, we chose to call it the Employer Branding Summit, a thriving platform for employer branding experts and ambassadors to exchange best practice within company culture, employer branding, and recruitment.
Today, we are a diverse group of employer branding professionals gathered in this room from Sweden, the UK, Portugal, Croatia, Finland, Hungary, South Africa, Brazil, and 30 plus more countries. That is absolutely fantastic, and we are so happy that you are here. This platform has truly turned into something amazing, and you are all a part of it. Please feel free to interact with us in the chat today. Say hi, ask us or our featured guest questions directly, and we will do our very best to be at your service. If you have any technical issues, please let us know in the chat or via the email you can see on screen, and our team from Oddwork will help you right away.
And guys, meeting you all here today, we are quite positive that most of us in this room do understand the importance of having a strong employer brand and to be able to attract, recruit, and retain talent. And whereas the first Employer Branding Summit in May 2020 focused on how different organizations reacted to a new reality in different ways, the second Employer Branding Summit in December 2020 was in fact a zoom out from the on-hand crisis and an exciting zoom in to the upcoming decade, the 20s of employer branding. And after each summit, we have asked you guys, what employer branding topic would you like us to focus on the next time? And after the last summit, the most frequent response was, give us hands-on employer branding tools and insights that we can take action on right away.
So enough of all the talking, and let's get down to business. What can you do as an employer branding, HR, management, marketing, or whatever position you hold professional within your company to create a successful corporate culture and a strong employer brand? Today, we're getting hands-on with employer branding. So what do you say, Poyan? Should we take a look at the agenda?
We should indeed. Today we will welcome 3 of the world's most prominent employer brands on this very digital stage for 3 different talks with very specific angles. First out, and in just a couple of minutes, we will welcome Therese Treutiger, Director of Global Partner Solutions and Innovation from Microsoft, to this summit. Therese will unwrap and discuss the questions about the workplace of tomorrow, how we are inevitably changing the way we work and how this will impact the leadership. From the perspective of a global IT company, we can learn how to manage the switch from on-site to flexible and also understand what implication that will have on management. Following the topic of hybrid workplaces and employer branding accelerators, we are excited to introduce you to the new employer branding tech tool, Life Inside. The Life Inside is an HR video product developed in close collaboration with some of Oddwork's most proactive partners, such as Axfood, Starship, Voi, Blocket, and many others over the last year. And with Life Inside, employee video storytelling is taken to the next level, and it will be officially introduced to you for the very first time. We're excited about this here today. After that, we are very glad to welcome Anna Fredriksson, Chief Human Resource Officer from Kry, known internationally as Livy. How do you go from an idea to having hundreds of employees worldwide in just a couple of years with successful business operations and a strong and successful culture and employer brand? We'll get the answer to that soon. And finally, we are very proud to welcome the Swedish Armed Forces Senior HR Strategist Christian Edman Freudenthal. The Swedish Armed Forces have gone through one of the most highlighted employer branding journeys for the last decade, and that is a journey from which there's a lot to be learned.
But you know what, Pan? I'm just thinking if we should just try one thing. What do you say about starting out with just a little game in the room here?
Let's start out with a little game with 30 plus countries represented in a digital format. Why not challenge ourselves with a little game? So we're doing a small little game. We call it a numbers game. And what I will ask you to do, I know that many of you are on a mobile device. In just a couple of minutes, you will see a page filled with numbers. There will be numbers from 1 spanning up to 80 plus. And I can guarantee, I assure you that every single digit between 1 to 80 plus something is on the very paper. And if you're on a mobile device, please zoom in on the page so you can see the numbers clearly. If you're on a computer, maximize the screen as much as possible. And we will count. What I will ask you to do is that I will ask you to find the number 1 first, digit number 1. When you have found number 1, search for number 2. And just to follow for yourself, point on it. So point on number 1, then point on number 2, then point on number 3. And we'll see how far you can get in 30 seconds time. And I know we have a lot of guests from all over the world right now. Someone might have started counting already. No idea, because we have one added rule to this. So you can just restart in just a couple of seconds. Because the final rule is, for the first 9 digits, it's perfectly fine to find number 1 as a part of 21. You can point on that. If you find 2 as a part of 32, perfectly fine, point on that too. But when you get to 10, you will have to find the actual number 10. When you get to 12, you have to find the actual 12 on the page. Charlie, Danny, is that clear enough instructions for a virtual event?
I do think so. Let's see. We've never done this in this big of a room, so it will be very exciting. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. No questions yet in the chat anyway, so we'll just get going. So if you have started to count, please reset. Our 30 seconds will start in 3, 2, 1, and please start the count. Can you feel the international tension from all over the world? People counting numbers on a live event.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes, huh?
We have half the time. That's 15 seconds right there.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't do so well the first time I did this, so
I still don't do that well on this one. So
me neither. We have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. That's 30 seconds right there. And the number that was the number you finished on, if it was between 10 to 15, please give us the answer. Was it between 16 to 20? Give us the answer to that. On the right-hand side of your screen right now, you will see a poll jumping up where you can give us your answers to your actual results. Let's see if we can get that poll live, and we'll see what the room actually ended up with. Okay, so we have our first answers in. We have, most of the room between 10 to 15. A lot of answers on 16 to 20. We have someone 25 plus. Starts
Some-
wondering if
Great job.
someone started a bit early. Might be so, but most of the room is ended up somewhere between 10 to 15. Some
16, 20, yeah.
yeah, 16, 20, and we have over approximately 200 answers in right now. So great job, everyone. We'll do this one more round. We'll do this one more round, and in just a couple of seconds time, you will see the very same page. We have not updated anything. All the digits are placed exactly the same on the same place as they were. However, we will add something. We will add a cross to our page. And with this cross, we get a little bit more system, a little bit more structure. So what we will do is that I can now tell you that in the upper right-hand corner, you will find the actual number 1. In the lower right-hand corner, you will find the actual number 2. In the lower left-hand corner, you will find the actual number 3. And in the upper left-hand corner, there's 4. And then it just goes on clockwise, and you will always find the next number in the next section of the page. Instructions clear enough, Charlie, Daniela?
As
Great.
clear as glass. Let's
Then
go.
Let's
go for
we'll
it.
take 30 more seconds starting in 3, 2, 1, and go. And we'll see
Good luck,
if
guys.
the results will improve.
We at least had 7 people that got 25 plus. That's great work.
Yeah, we'll email them afterwards and ask if that was
Well,
cheating
how
involved.
did you
or
do it? How did
I
you
think they are
cheat your way
cheaters.
past us?
Right, so we cannot see the results are anonymous anyway.
Yeah.
So
What's the time?
we have 5 seconds.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, and stop. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a new poll jumping up. And we would love to see if we did improve our results the second time around. We'll wait a couple of seconds for the answers to start jumping in. We got a lot of people in the room from many different countries, but we want to know, how far did you get this time? Daniela, how much was your improvement when you did this?
Well, I guess it was over 50%. It was, yeah. My first time was bad, though.
Yeah, and we see quite an improvement already. In the first round, we had 11% of the room. 11% of the room answering somewhere, they ended up somewhere between 21 to 25. Already, right now, we have 50% of the room in somewhere between 21 to 25. And answers are still coming in. We're getting up to 100 plus answers, 150 soon. And yeah, over 50% of the room did end up somewhere between 21 to 25 in comparison to 11% of the room the first round of the numbers game. So great job, everyone. We cannot announce a winner. You all are. But why spend minutes counting numbers? Well, this is not too far away from an employer branding journey. How is that? Well, all of you in this room represent companies with cultures. We know that you have your culture, and the culture is represented by the numbers. Let's say that the numbers represent the different behaviors, attitude, values, activities that create that culture. In this very game, represented by the numbers on the page. What we try to offer is systematic and structured tools that increase effectiveness working with those numbers, just as the cross actually does in the numbers game. With systematic and structured tools, we could just increase the results by 41% in just a couple of minutes time in the numbers game. So just imagine what we can do with 120 minutes of hands-on employer branding tools together today. And with that, live stream from the Oddwork headquarters in Gothenburg, Sweden, we are glad to say welcome to the 3rd edition of the Employer Branding Summit. Let's get going.
Well, let's do that. And I think, are we ready to welcome our first guest to the summit?
I think we are. I think we are.
Let's do it.
We have seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. Those are the words of CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, on the topic of the future of work. Arguably, the last 18 months have fast-forwarded the future of work by 5 or 10 years, and there is no going back. The era of hybrid work is truly here, and now we have to make it work with factors such as employee preference and well-being incorporated with business requirements. HR and people analytics teams will be at the forefront of this discussion, and those people are gathered in this room today. How many of you would say that you have met someone when you have talked over Teams? Quite many, right? Of course we've met. We've seen each other and we talked to each other. Do you think the answer would have been the same 2 years ago? Probably not.
Probably not. And to go from on-site to remote to flexibles means changing how we operate and how we define our workplace. 2 years ago, many considered remote working and video conference calls to be slightly exotic. Nowadays, the digital meeting is part of our daily routine, and the difference between a digital and an on-site meeting is quite blurred. Here to teach us more about the hybrid workplace today is Therese Treutiger. Therese is the Director of Global Partner Solutions and Innovation at Microsoft. She has held the position as Deputy CEO in Sweden at the very same company for the past 7 years. And before joining Microsoft, Therese had a great career at the Swedish telecommunications company Telia, working with both governments and enterprises. So who better to ask? What does the workplace of tomorrow look like? Will our employees be content with coming back to the office, or has this temporary change gone too far? Welcome to the Employer Branding Summit, Therese Treutiger. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Poyan and Daniela. Really great to be here. And thanks you also for the invite. I mean, I'm so passionate about this topic. I think it's so interesting because we are mentioning employee branding. For me, this is not just an HR question. This is so important for every company, for every organization to understand this is going to define your success today and tomorrow. How you're going to attract spearhead talent for your business, but also how you're going to attract strategic partnerships and customers and who are willing to be able to work with you. So I think the employee branding is so important for you to really take serious and really to work with that, because it's a never-ending story and you always need to redesign yourself and also to evaluate what is working for you as a company and what should you stand for here.
Therese, we are so happy to have you here, and we couldn't agree more, of course. And I know we have a really exciting topic to talk about today, and we are curious, when did Microsoft start preparing for this hybrid workplace that we are now in?
I think I should share a bit of where we come from. I mean, Microsoft is a global tech company. So the digital platforms, what we have right now, it's quite common, just as you say, Poyan. But we started out already 2012. We were placed in the suburbs of Stockholm, so we had some challenges actually to attract talent out there. So we said, okay, we need to do something differently. And what we wanted to create then was to focus on the physical place, but also the culture and how people were collaborating across the teams. That was the key areas that we really wanted to change, because we could see that people were still stuck in the organizational structures, and we wanted to create an environment that we had an openness, we have a more of activity-based opportunity to work in the place in the office. So in 2012, we took the opportunity to create what we thought then was the most innovative workplace in Sweden. And I think since then we had, just in 5 years, more than 100,000 visitors just to that office. So it was a great position. What happened though is that in, say, 2017, 2018, the landscape transformed and changed within Sweden, within Stockholm, and the industry took different kind of directions in how they created solutions. And what we also started to notice was that we had, again, difficulties to attract talent out to the suburbs of Stockholm. That was maybe not the best place to be. So we started to look into, okay, what is the new workplace of tomorrow that we want to create? Because we always, as a tech leading company, want to be spearhead, forefront of that kind of position of the workplace. But now we changed a bit of focus. It's just not just a focus of the internal, of the physical place, or people allowing a hybrid work, remote work. That we thought was all done, signed and delivered. We had tested out, we had great learnings, and it worked well. But what we also saw was that a lot of the networking, collaboration took place in the center of Stockholm, but also in Gothenburg. We have a very strong industry network, automotive industry in Gothenburg. So we said, okay, we need to be close to our customers. We need to be close to the startup community. We need to be close to this community. Otherwise, we would be an outsider. So we need to get in again. And what we did was quite not a revolution, but close to revolution, because we downsized our office in the city with 1/3 square meters, and 2/3 of those square meters was open space for our customers and partners. So we built a technology center where we could co-create with our customers and partners, because what we saw in this transformation was also that customers, they just don't buy a product or solutions. They want to have an adopted solution. They want to have the possibility to transform and to design their own solution for them, what could be suitable for them. And then, of course, we have the sustainability perspective, because we had been living outside the suburbs. Everyone was driving car. I was also driving the car. And in the goal and mission of a more sustainable Microsoft, we also needed to find a place. So we'd actually draw a circle within Stockholm where every employee were living. And so, okay, where do we have the central hub? And it was the central part of Stockholm. So that everyone would be able to go with the public transportation. And just listen, we have no garage. And the leadership team was just, okay, this is never going to land with our employees. But it actually did. It was no opposition for that, because everyone was really shipping in, because this was also a way how every individual and every employee could contribute to a more sustainable Sweden. So I must say I was surprised, but this was a bit of the way that we started out our journey. And then we had this whole 18-month of digitalization and transformation, but we come back to that.
That's so interesting. So I will get back to many questions on that intro. First of all, starting in 2012, that's a quite good projection on what the future will hold. Wish I had that one myself. And also the downsizing of the office to just 1/3 of the space, and two-thirds of that third being co-creation space. But I just have to start. Why did you think about this so early on? You described it briefly, but why did that discussion actually come up, and what drove it to execution so early on?
I think that the first intention point was, we are a tech company. We wanted also to test out our own technology. I mean, could you really have a workplace of working from remote? Could you work with customers and still have access to all the documentation and all the information? But what we also saw transforming was we really needed to break out the barriers within the organization. So it's a lot of internal focus. And this was the CIO, Satya Nadella, who really, when he entered the stage as the CEO for Microsoft, he said, okay, we need to break down the silos. We need to get people to collaborate, to work together, and more centralized in a customer obsession and partner obsession way. And then you need to find areas, spaces, and also the digital opportunities to use the technology to be able to have that kind of virtual team surrounding different kind of projects. I think that was the initial ambition, was to test out our technology, and also, of course, to then work with a more attractive physical workplace. But it then transformed more to cultural collaboration, piloting, testing that has really stayed in our hearts till now, I would say. So that is the core and has become the core.
That's good thing you tested. That saved us a lot of hustle 8 years later. So thanks a lot from me and thousands of guests from 30 plus countries. Yeah, and I just want to summarize that. I mean, so attracting the talent, creating the innovative environment, management on board, co-creation and network, a lot of different things playing in. Really, really interesting. I also want to say that we have a couple of audience questions coming in as well, a lot actually, and we will get back to them later on. So please send in your questions, and we will get them to Therese in just a couple of minutes' time.
Yeah, I could ask 1,000 questions myself, but I have to maintain the time here. So you saw this big change in 2012, and then you had another one in 16, 17, and we've been through big changes now as well. The workplace of tomorrow, how does it look? What is the new normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have our experiences of the last 18 months. I mean, it's been a journey. It's been a challenge. And we say that Sweden had to got digitalized in 7 days, and that's a bit where we are. And of course, we love to do studies and we love to measure things. So we have done a lot of studies. So how did it go? Is everyone pleased with the situation? And what we have seen now is that 80% of the managers think that they are at least as effective as they were before. This is the situation that we've had. And also that 80% even believes that they are even more effective in working in this remote digital workplace. What we also can see is that we have 70% of the employees would not like to go back just to have the office as the place to work with. And 60% would like to have a more social engagement in the office. So that is really interesting. And that is what we call from Microsoft a hybrid paradox. You would like to work from remote, you would like to have that opportunity, but you still want to engage with your colleagues. And even 50%, almost 50% of the participants in the studies say they will never choose a company that will only require you to work from your office. So I think that is really, really interesting. And my own learning is that we really had to transform, and what we can see now, we will never go back to the way it was. You need to understand how to create the hybrid workplace, and the hybrid workplace is definitely here to stay.
And I have many different routes here, but I'm going to stick to one because this is really interesting. The leadership. How will this affect the leadership? Obviously, they have a very central role in such switch. So, yeah, how will it affect it?
No, but my own learnings and what we have seen is we have transformed the leadership a lot. I'm quite result-driven. I like KPIs, performance, and really have that motion going. Are we reaching our targets? And I had to change, and a lot of us had to change our management style with a bit more empathy and care. So I needed to connect with my managers, with our employees much more often. So shorter meetings, more meetings. And what we can also see is it became more inclusive. I'm working on a global level. So I'm working with, you named Saudi Arabia, I'm working with Dubai, Brazil, Canada, Europe. I'm working across the globe. It's more inclusive sometimes to have a digital meeting than one or two are attending via Teams link, and then you have a physical meeting with people just chit-chatting, you know. I think we have really learned a lot now how to use the camera, how to present ourselves, but also how to use the digital tools to become much more inclusive for the team. And that opens up also recruitment from the whole world, because it's a global market of talent. And what we also learned is that we really need to have shorter meetings, more meetings, open up for me as a startup. Also, I own the startup community and that kind of connection with Microsoft in Sweden. I need to have much more networking meetings with them. And the digital way of working has really worked out for me. So I more than doubled all external, you can say cold call meetings with external parties. And that has really enriched me a lot. And I really broadened my network. But we can also see as a bit of, you have this flexibility, you also need to have the structure. Coming back to the structure, you need to have the performance, you need to set out the mission, and you need to have some kind of KPIs also to set the direction for your teams actually to deliver upon what they should do. So that means that you need to have a bit more structure where you prepare meetings and where you also follow up the business.
Yeah, so you mentioned all of these big effects on the leadership and also coming into KPIs, and I can only imagine this affects employees, of course. How are the changes coming in that sense for employees?
Well, I mean, I'm representing an American company, and I think that our culture that I think is working really well, even in Sweden, where we do have a quite a flexible management culture, is working well. If you have a role modeling leadership that is bringing in empathy, caring, and then you can balance that with set directions, set vision goals, but you also need to work very closely with them. So you cannot just say, okay, you should do this, and then you let them go. So you need also to be part of that as a manager, and you also need to set the direction and follow up in a bit more thorough I would say rhythm. So that is what I'm doing. I'm having a weekly connection with a lot of my team members, and just to see how can I support you, can I help you, can I give some guidance, can I open up some doors. And I think that has really had a super positive effect. So I think it's a good balance to have the KPIs. I love the KPIs, and to have that kind of performance culture, but also then in combination with care and empathy in the leadership.
Thanks. And I just want to take one question from the audience. It's not that section yet, but the study that we were referring to earlier, was that based on only employees at Microsoft or a bigger target group, just so we know what numbers we got?
It's much broader. So it's international, it's both in Sweden and it's global studies as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And so when we talk about the new normal, and with your experience with both the years from 2012 and your own personal experience, if you were to put out guiding principles for the new normal, what would that be?
Now, I think you really need to embrace the new. You need to embrace the hybrid workplace. You can never go back. And that is coming back to, it's going to define your success. It's going to define how you will be able to recruit, but also strategic partnerships and how you will, if you would like to attract customers. I think when you are designing the workspace, it's important to think, how would you like to collaborate, not just internally, but externally? You need to be able to reach out and to connect with your customers and with your partners or your strategic network. It's very easy just to rely back and to focus on your internal office space. So I think that is super important as well. And then I think you need to also find the managers who actually can embrace this new way of hybrid way of working with the balance of empathy, but also with the balance of KPIs and performance direction, setting that kind of rhythm. To gear up, but also with a lot of coaching and empathy. And I think what you also need to embrace and to find in your guiding principle is really to find the areas where you can have a social meetings. You need to find those places. You need also to embed that in your leadership and to be able to connect, to support your employees to connect.
Thanks a lot. And Therese, we have a lot of questions from our guests. So my team at Oddwork, they're helping me to take out a couple, and I would like to start with this one, which is how did you so early on, and this is quite relevant right now for all companies, obviously. How did you guys manage to convince employees to switch to a hybrid workplace? In specific countries, the can be more conservative approach to the hybrid work, and in certain markets, how did you guys do to get people on board?
Well, I think what we did was to engage people. We had different projects, and a lot of employees were engaged and took part in how to design the new office, and also to how to design the principles. How should we rely to the cultures? So the culture piece and the values was embedded, not just, okay, now we create a new physical place and then you will have a new computer and then you will have a new office. So it was embedded with the culture. How should we behave? How should we connect? How should we use our office? And that was 50% of the project of how to implement the new way of work.
And do you, and that this is a new question, do you show your hybrid culture in your employer branding communication? How is that shown?
Yes, we are. We are taking part of a lot of awards, and we won a lot of awards for several years and today as well. Diversity inclusion is part of that as well, and we attend a lot of awards because we're interested also to if we say that we would like to be spearhead, of course we also need to have some kind of proof points and in comparison also with other companies. So yes, we do. It's different kind of, if it's tech company, if it's best workplace, if it's best place for co-creation with customers. So it could be different kind of awards, but the employee branding, I think that is the umbrella for everyone, because that is a position you need to take to be able to attract talent as well.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put one more question in there because this is a very good one. Did you also introduce flexible working hours while introducing hybrid workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. No fixed working hours. Everyone has 100% flexible hours, and no one is ever measured how often are you in the office or how often are you working from remote and home. So it's 100% flexible, but you need to, coming back to that, you need to balance the flexibility with the performance and the empathy and staying close as a manager with your team and with your employees. I think that is critical if you want to be successful.
Thank you. Very, very hands-on.
I agree. So many insights, so many tips and tricks, and I think everyone here today have a lot of them to bring home to their company. But if you were to boil it down to your top 3 recommendations on how to create the workplace of tomorrow, what would that be?
No, but I mean, embrace the hybrid work. Don't be afraid. I mean, that is going to be crucial for you to embrace the hybrid workplace, but also then to also work with the office space. How are you going to include your office with your customers, with your partners? Don't get fixed with the just a perspective. It needs to be internal use for internal use. And then also the manager, the culture. Find your managers that are role modeling in leading the way with empathy, but also clear guidance. And I think that is the way that you need the 3 core pillars to be successful.
Therese, thank you very, very much for joining us here today, for very hands-on advice. I want to tell all our guests here today as well that we did search our network a lot to get an answer on the new normal. And look and behold, when we found Therese and got her 10-year insights on a new workplace. Charlie, what do you say about those insights?
No, I think it's just such an insightful talk, Therese, and especially what you're saying there, that this is so much more than just an HR question. It really affects the entire brand towards clients and customers as well. And as you referred to the hybrid paradox, I think many of us think about that and have experienced that ourselves. We saw that in the chat too, that yes, we would like to have that freedom, but we also want to engage with colleagues. So that's interesting, and just how you exemplify this performance culture that can sound a bit harsh and hard, but just clear KPIs, but enforce that it has to be implemented together with empathy as well. I found that highly interesting and many more things. So thank you for a great talk.
Thank you all. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank
Cindy.
you so
very
much.
And great engagement in the chat too. We would like to ask a question to our audience also. On the right hand side, by now you know the poll system. We would like to ask you, what's your primary employer branding challenge right now? Is it communicating your employer brand externally? Is it developing your culture internally? Is it getting management on board? That was really interesting hearing about top management internationally on Microsoft initiating this 2012 already, or is it all of the above? Is it a combination of all? So we would love to see your answers on that as well. Welcome to answer when you have the possibility to do so. We have answers coming in.
And we should say, of course, that we do understand that there can be more detailed choices here, but it's just interesting to take the temperature in the room if it's more of an internal focus right now or an external focus right now, or both.
Exactly.
So just great to get insights on that.
Yeah, and
Mixed
really,
answers.
but
coming
really
in.
interesting to see that we have a leader with communicating our employer brand externally with around 40%, approximately 150 going up to 200 answers have come in. We have 30% developing our culture internally, 11% right now getting management on board, and all of the above, 1/5 of the guests in this room with us today. But that's really interesting to see communicating our employer brand in the lead on approximately 40%, because based on the results that we see in the poll, I'm very excited to move on to our next talk. As Therese explained, and as most of us in this room probably agree, the candidate market is changing, and the need to effectively and authentically be able to communicate our company's cultures and employer brands to attract the right candidates has never been bigger. As an employer branding and recruitment company, we've watched so many candidates missed out on a great employer simply because they did not realize how great of a fit that specific culture and company would be for them. And in the very same way, we watched many companies miss out on attracting or recruiting the right talent simply because they haven't been able to communicate their culture, opportunities, and life inside the organization to candidates in an effective way, really. This communication gap between candidates and employers is one of the biggest gaps and challenges on the candidate market today, and it's so unnecessary. So, as we promised you hands-on employer branding tools here today, we decided to do something about it. And together with around 20 of our most proactive employer branding partners, we've spent last year developing the HR tech and employee video storytelling platform Life Inside, and it will be presented for you for the very first time now. So Charlie, as head of employer branding at Oddwork, first of all, tell us more about the background behind Life Inside and why it has been developed.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we should really reach out to many of our most proactive partners that we know are in this room right now, because you guys have really been part in developing this. So thank you for doing that, and it continues to be developed based on your feedback. But yeah, I mean, you put it out there really clearly. So as an employer branding and recruitment company, we are faced with two perspectives on a daily basis, right? We are faced with the candidate perspective, where we have candidates today that want to research and get insights into potential employer before they even consider to apply. The way we review and research employees today is much more in depth than it was just a couple of years ago. So we have that side, and on the other side, we have the great fortune of stepping into many organizations and employer brands. And at many times, as you explain, we see these amazing cultures, these great opportunities for the right candidates, but we also see this challenge in the company's ability to communicate these opportunities and what it's like to be part of the company. So that is, as you explained, that's why we started to have dialogues with partners about a year ago about this challenge. If many saw this gap on the candidate market. And that was and that is still the situation. It has actually been addressed that not being able to understand what it's actually like to work at the specific company that you might be interested in is the number one hurdle as to why you do not apply. So quite simply, we decided to do something about it. And and that is the solution that we are excited to present to Employer Brand Summit attendees here today.
So that's the background. But what is the solution then?
Exactly. I mean, so you'll of course you'll see it live here soon. But so the solution is a combination of this gap and the challenge that we've been talking about, together with trends that we see right now. So major trends in connection to both employer branding, but also trends as a whole globally. And there are two major ones. When it comes to employer branding, there's a lot of focus right now on authenticity, on really communicating the employer brand in an authentic way. And I mean, after everything that has happened for all of us during the last 1.5 years, that has become increasingly fortified as well. And so that's one. And number two is the use of the so-called user-generated video, filming of yourself via, many times, your mobile phone. If you think about Instagram stories, or TikTok or Slack, or I don't know if anyone's seen, but Slack came out yesterday. They will add a stories function to Slack as well, so it's coming into business communication too. And when you combine this challenge with the trends that we see, because as we have all experienced this digitalization, as Therese is referring to as well, even our more senior colleagues are now used to using video as a means of communication. So when you combine that, you get Life Inside. That is the solution. So Life Inside is really all about employee storytelling, reinvented. You'll see it live shortly. So it's a video platform together with a video widget that presents itself right on your career site and also on your job ads, if you would like to add that, with employees authentically video replying to questions about life inside your organization. So that is the solution.
Can we take a look at it?
We can absolutely take a look at it. So we can just bring up a video right here for you to see. So first of all, we've just picked out two global career sites, the way they normally look, so Coca-Cola, and we'll also see Apple shortly. So most career sites look something like this. We try to convey the culture in a clear enough way. But the challenge is, of course, I think you guys can recognize this as well, is that if you think about all the different candidates that come in to your career site, different candidates, different perspectives, hence different questions that you would like to get an answer to before you decide to apply, right? Just like as you would when you review a hotel and are thinking about booking that. So at many times, this is what it looks like. So we thought about, well, how can we bridge this and instead put employees at the forefront of the employer brand and that culture.
Because they look different, but they say quite the same, right?
Exactly. I mean, so it's quite difficult for candidates to get cultural insight. So Life Inside, as you'll see sooner, is employee storytelling reinvented, and it's about putting your employees at the forefront of the candidate experience. And we'll in the video jump into a couple of companies that have Life Inside activated since a couple of months. So you see the Life Inside video widget there that is integrated into the career sites and job ads and so forth with, as you see, employees from all over the organization. This is a company, Avinode, within the aviation industry. They have operations in the US and in Sweden, where you see employees just replying to all sorts of different questions. And there is no limit on questions here. It could be questions about, this gentleman right here, what is most challenging in your role as a software engineer? Or what do you do in your role as an account manager? I mean, imagine interacting with a potential colleague in this way if you were to apply for an account management position. So the Life Inside widget is activated like that, but you can also click it down, as we see there, and experience the career site as it normally is today. Here we have Axfood, one of Sweden's major retail, food retail groups, and Marketplace Blocket, for example, that are using Life Inside to front their employer brand with their actual employees in this way as well. So Life Inside is for one, this video widget that you can place on any landing page in career site and so forth, but it's also a video library. We refer to it as Netflix for candidates. So when you get candidates and visitors coming in, or you can click on the widget at the bottom there, and you will be taken into what we refer to then as Netflix for candidates, where you can see all employee content from the organization. This is on Oddwork's own career site. And you can see that all the videos there, they have these video tags at the bottom. And they are the same ones as to the left there. So this finally, if you will, allows candidates to browse and search for perspectives based on locations and departments and themes that are interesting to them if they think about applying for an open position with your company. So say that in this example that I know we'll see here, someone is interested in, Gothenburg and recruitment. You can do that search and get perspectives on, for example, how do you onboard new team members, which Johanna there is explaining, for example, or Eleanor, one of our senior talent managers, explaining what makes her proud about working at the company. So it's a great way to finally allow candidates to get these perspectives and also directly on job ads. So it's really a way to reimagine what a career site and a job ad can be. And as we know, there are a lot of really proactive employer branding professionals in this room now. We felt that this should be introduced, apart from the proactive partners that has helped us develop this, to the Employer Branding Summit attendees here today.
Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, so it changes the perception of the career site and job ads, really. But I can imagine quite a few people, and we have a lot of questions coming in also. We'll get to them in a minute. But I can just imagine many other people in the room are wondering, how are these employee videos recorded? How does it actually happen?
Yeah, so just short answer to that, it's designed for simplicity. So as an admin, you get access to your own Life Inside platform, branded, of course, in your company colors, just like the widget. And from there, you simply send out video requests via the system. Video requests are sent out via email. So they come straight into the recipients or the employee's, inbox. And they just, put up their phone. They record their reply like this. I could record it right here, right now. And then just upload a video. That's it. And then you can take it live as an admin and review it and take it live. So it's simple.
So it seems great and it seems really simple, but what kind of results are we starting to see for the companies who have tried this?
Yeah, so, and I see a question there with consent as well. So all employees, they approve of the use of the video as they upload the video. Results that we're seeing, it's really exciting. The data becomes better all the time. But what we are seeing is, for example, increased time on site from visitors and candidates. They engage with your brand for a longer time in this way. You also see KPIs, like increased conversion, but also increased employee engagement internally, because you really turn employees into ambassadors. And it's also a great way to, show people internally what other colleagues are doing. So we've seen that too. And all in all, even more positive brand experience, humanizing the brand.
And one question here from Natalie from the Cassandra Foundation. How many videos can you create?
It's a super cool question, right back. No limit. You can create as many videos as you'd like. There's no limit. We truly believe in sharing, all the perspectives that we know lies within organizations, and we know that there are many. So, overarching videos, absolutely, but we've also seen, really in-depth videos into what you as an organization are doing, how you are developing the market, how you develop this product, or whatever it might be. Questions that we know interest candidates. No limits on videos.
One more question, short answer. Can you put a specific video in a specific job ad with a related future colleague, for example?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that is a great. That is the idea of the system. Correct. So you can do that. Short answer.
Thanks. And we did tell you today that we wanted to offer the summit guest hands-on tools to develop your employer brands. So if anyone is interested in trying out Life Inside, how do you do, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, it's real simple. You have a website that's lifeinside.io. You can just log into that and just book a personal sit down with Nick there. Great guy, by the way, Nick.
He's great.
He's a great guy. So and he will be happy to just take you through 30 minutes of that and explain how it can work. Or also, of course, just email us directly on contact@lifeinside.io and we'll get back to you. So it's simple.
Great. Thank you very much. Also, by the end of this event, we will ask you, as we always do, for your feedback on the event as a whole. And automatically, by giving us your feedback, you're in the raffle with the prize of getting Life Inside for free in your organization for 6 months. So please help us with the feedback. We try to make these events better and better each time. And hopefully you can get the chance to try out Life Inside also. And with that, thank you very much, Charlie. Let's move on
Thank
to
you.
our next speaker.
Let's do it.
Because every couple of years or so, an innovation or a new way of work comes along and fundamentally disrupts how things have been done in the past. One could easily argue that Apple disrupted the world with its iPhone. Spotify did the same thing with music, and I would not be taking a risk in this live event by stating that Amazon has changed the rules and expectations of the e-commerce game. Now, imagine 10 years ago, if I told you that you can have a doctor's appointment in 5 minutes, no matter where in the world you're located. Imagine you could just log on to an app, book an appointment, and meet the doctor virtually and get help right away. Would you believe it? Kry, with their international brand name Livy, made that possible, and it changed it all. In a time of globalization and change, one specific metric is more important than everything else when such disruption comes along: speed. The idea is fantastic, and the speed of turning that idea into reality is essential. But what about the culture then? How do you translate the visions of a founder and the core values of a founding team with the new strategic goals, the new strategic destinations, the new international markets, and the hundreds and thousands of talents that will join your organization? What about the diversity and inclusion in that process?
Well, those are great questions, and Anna Fredriksson, who is Chief Human Resource Officer at Kry Livy, should know. Kry Livy has faced the question of core values in times of change many times and pushed through, creating strategies spanning multiple countries and bridging gaps between cultures, languages, and nationalities. Anna, with a background in management consulting at Capgemini and Chief Human Resource Officer at another unicorn, Truecaller, joined Livy 4 years ago and is the key person behind the cultural success. And we should be able to bring Anna up here right now. Welcome to the summit, Anna Fredriksson. Are you with us? There we go. She is. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome
Very good.
to the summit. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I'll jump into it right away. Anna, as Chief Human Resource Officer, what did you put your initial focus on when you joined Kry Livy?
So the first thing I did when I joined Kry, this was 4 years ago, and at that time in total it was 30 employees, and I was the first one in HR. So I sort of came in, got my computer. There was no onboarding there because they told me, you're supposed to fix the onboarding now, right? And started with a very blank paper sheet or Google Doc, like there was nothing in place. And then I think it's really important that you start with the core values to make sure that we have agreed and aligned on articulating the core values, because when we have that in place, that's when we can start building all the people and culture processes. Yeah. So this was definitely the first thing I did, and worked in an iterative process with the full company, not that many at the time, on establishing the values, because it was very clear. It's like you could feel the energy when you walked into the Kry office. It was like you needed to align on what are those values, and values, if you put it really simple, it's behaviors you value as an organization and you want to have in order to build your organization. Yeah. So I can tell you a bit about the process, because we asked everyone to tell us in a survey like what values they're associated with Kry, and we got a long list. And then we could start grouping and seeing what were the most common. And then we had a session with the management team presenting the values, discuss them. What do they mean really? Are these values that we have, that we aspire to have, or a combination? How can we work with it? Then we went back again and we had deep dive sessions with employees to understand more what they thought, really going into more depth. Then went back again, iterative process, and we also focused on Values, how do we think, how do we act, how do we learn, really looking at the behaviors. And then we agreed, and I remember we launched them the first Christmas party at that time, where we had a big workshop, presented the values, had workshop sessions where employees could discuss scenarios. How do you react in these situations based on the values?
Yeah.
What does these behaviors mean to you? So really, that was the launch. And from then we could start building all the people processes. So what do we hire for? How do we review, performance review, promotions, everything?
So I mean, it's really interesting to listen into that, because I can imagine a lot of people in this room are thinking about how they could potentially revise, or maybe even from the start identify the values that are active in their own organizations. And it's been clear that you did so with the whole organization, engaging both employees and management. So it's interesting to hear what role does the culture and Cree Livy's core values play in your growth as a company now, because you guys are growing rapidly?
Yeah, I mean, I think values are fundamental, absolutely the core. It's like building a house. You know, you need to do the foundation work first. Otherwise, you might build a house or a building really fast, but eventually you will notice that there will be some cracks and instability, and it's looking good and you're trying to fix it, and then you realize you need to go back to the foundation and do it well. It's exactly the same with values. I believe that we would not have been able to scale at the pace that we've done should we have not done the core values, because that has helped us in everything we do, and that is really it has built the glue also when we launch into new markets and launching new products and features. So definitely vital.
Anna, your situation is unique in many ways. You're growing quickly across multiple markets. And as you've grown, what challenges in regards to core values have you faced on a group level? And also, I would like to ask, how do you address them on a local level? And if you have examples of that, I would love to hear them.
Sure. I mean, there are challenges when you're growing, this fast, especially when you're growing extremely fast, entering new markets, and it's a pandemic, so you're all working remotely. You can't even go fly over and travel to each other. But hiring at the speed that we've done, we realized that we need to not only have great hiring processes, and I really think we do, but also make sure we have great onboarding processes, because we need people to feel welcome and feel that the expectations that they received in the hiring process, that actually when they come to work, they the experience should exceed their expectations. They should feel like, yes, this was not just a sales pitch. This is Cree Livy. This is what it's about. So working with the onboarding, we decided quickly that we needed to do that super scalable. So using our HRIS, when we've submitted the contract, we click on start onboarding process, and that triggers lots of activities to make sure that the employee can order their equipment, so it's sent home to them in a nice package with a nice welcome gift. Reading all the pre-reads, they can watch all hands sessions, the company all hands we do. If we've done a podcast, read the different information needed, but also it's about making sure that we plan for the first time in onboarding. So everything's like automized. They fill in a short get to know the new employee that is sent to everyone on the first working day. So when people join, we know, okay, that's you, and your best health hack is to eat ginger every day, for example. So we ask people to share some fun facts. And then when they start, we have global onboarding days, as well as local market specific onboarding. And in the global onboarding days, this is a full day when everyone in the management team is presenting and really spending time with all the new joiners, going through history, vision, mission, culture, answering the questions. And we also have sessions for people to get to know each other. This originally was done in the headquarters, and now it's done fully remote, but it's working really well. We have super high satisfaction. So a global onboarding day, making sure they all feel welcome, get to know the people, meeting with the founder, as well as then the local or team specific onboarding. So everyone should be equipped and understanding key priorities from start. So I think that has really been something that we've managed really well with the global onboarding. So that's the first. The second one, which is very much related, is communication, because engagement is all about communication. We use Slack instead of email. So it's really easy when you join all the Slack channels, and then you know what's going on. And you can also you can go back and see in the conversations, the discussions that led to a decision. So new hiring managers don't have to sit and forward emails and share files and folders. It's all in Slack. We've got lots of different Slack channels. Also, employees create their own Slack channels, the pet channel, cooking class, hot all kinds of random channels where they really engage and plan activities and do things together. So, and we use a lot of our values in the Slack channels. We have these customized emojis. It's a lot of supporting each other and cheering and applauding each other. We have the kudos Slack channel, of course, where we recognize great work and achievements that our colleagues have done. And also on communication, since start, every Monday, we have the company all hands. We have Johannes, the founder and the CEO, presenting, and other employees and team members presenting company priorities, updates, what's happening, inspiring things, or things that, other things that everyone needs to know about, which makes us all, regardless of where we are, we understand what's going on. It also gives people a chance to present and practice public speaking and being recognized for the work they've done. So the all hands, the Slack communication, plus the Friday demos. Every Friday we demo what has been built. That has really been the kind of glue, and it's always connected with values. So we're trying to really align the values in everything we do.
So it's so interesting, isn't it? Because as you refer to Slack, for example, it could of course be Teams or another chat channel there. But I know that we see quite a lot of questions in connection to how do you allow your culture to remain and to flourish, but when it's remote. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because I can imagine quite a lot of people in the room as well, if one uses those sorts of channels, that they really have become at the home to a lot of the culture. And it sounds like you feel like that as well.
Yes, I am. Definitely. It's always been from start that the employees have very much been extremely engaged. So HR has never had the role of being the event organizer, trying to fix events, because the employees have done that themselves and felt empowered to, which I think is fantastic. So, before the pandemic, we had like tea tasting ceremonies and cooking classes and all that. And then when we're all working remotely, we could do it digitally, right? Yeah. People buy the ingredients and they cook together, or they have afterworks together, or whatever they do. Or if they live in the same city, then maybe they could do some walk and talks outside. So keeping that spirit and culture and having Slack constantly communicating at all times, I think that has been very, it has really been a strength for us during the pandemic. Definitely.
And it must be so interesting for you, Anna, because as you said, you stepped in when you guys were about 30 people in the organization. There was no onboarding process. Now, clearly, you have an automated onboarding process that is both digital and well, maybe not physical, but it's at least it's a presence there. So based on what you've done during these years, what would you say have been your 3 most impactful actions in regards to preserving or developing crew leavers values?
I mean, definitely that we have. So what has made it really successful is that we're really taking, we've really hired people who believe in our values and who behave according to our values. So we have never compromised on that. We've met with fantastic people who worked in amazing companies and great resumes and all that. But if they don't behave as we believe we should behave in our company, we have not compromised on that. So that has really enabled us to build this strong culture, and I think that has really, really been vital. And people who join us, and I have several people in my team, they're all like, people are so friendly. You know, I thought it was just a hiring process, and now I joined the company and people are even more friendly. It's amazing. And this is the culture that we created because it's extremely important to us and we don't want to compromise on that. I also think that, you know, that we have applied values in everything we do. So recruit based on values, we do performance management, the promotions, onboarding, offboarding, whatever we do, we incorporate the values to demonstrate how important it is. That has been really, really vital. And then I think we've made our values pretty sticky. Simple. We can all remember them. We can all, I think if I would call someone in their sleep, they would know them. We constantly repeat them, communicate them, use the emojis, the GIF is everything in everything we do. So it's very, very sticky. And you know, you can have super sophisticated values, but I personally think you don't need to overcomplicate, because it's important that everyone understands what it means. What do they mean? And then you need to make them stick. So I think that is the key.
I have one question here, referring back to what you were telling us earlier about the onboarding. Was that a huge effort from the very start? And you did, because you mentioned a lot of the things are automated, and as soon as you send out the contract, this automated process just goes out. Obviously, that must have been a huge amount of work in the beginning. But how often do you review that ongoing, you and your team?
We have to review. I mean, and definitely, it's not, you know, it can always be even more optimized and even more perfect. So we're constantly looking to see how we can improve. I think, you know, you're never done. You always need to revisit and see, does this still make sense? We've had to revisit onboarding so many times, because at first we were a Swedish company, and then we expanded to new markets, which meant we need to add the local touches, and then it's, you know, more teams and more functions, and then we got new feedback. So we're looking at it at all times, and we're always looking at this onboarding survey to understand how are we doing in the rating and what can we do better, and then we take that feedback and immediately try to incorporate it. And also we're using an engagement tool. Again, there are several different tools, but we're tracking engagement on a weekly basis, and we've done so for a couple of years. So we know how our employees are doing, and we can take action if needed. And all managers are responsible to making sure they check how teams are doing, reading the feedback, and also taking action, and having workshops with employees if they see a negative trend. So for us, this is like, you know, we look at it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever needed. But of course, we're never done. We need to constantly think how we can improve and adapt. And
I know that we are talking about Crew Livy's core values here. We realized, but we haven't actually spoken them and said which ones they are. Could we just ask you to clarify, Anna, which values you have?
This is patient first, even before coffee. That's on all our coffee mugs. That's the first value, really, to put the patient first. That's the core reason to why we exist. That is why Johannes founded, and the other co-founders founded Crew Livy, because they felt that very few healthcare providers actually put the patient first and thought about the patient experience. So that will always be our first value. That can never be compromised on. Then it is that we act with courage. And this has changed a bit from the big bold moves that it was in the beginning when we launched digital healthcare, when everyone said it was impossible, or we entered the new market. But now courage can very much be about having the courage to ask the challenging questions, having the courage to ask for feedback, having the courage to give feedback. So having the courage to challenge someone if you feel they're not putting the patient first. So courage is more around things you can do every day. Everyone can do it nearly on an hourly basis. And that is very much connected to the third value, which is we have grit. With this, we're talking about growth mindset. So having the ambitious goals, but knowing that it will not be an easy way to get there, and being resilient, finding solutions when we see barriers, not focusing on the problems, but on the solutions, not giving up while we seek to achieve our goals. So very much growth mindset, learning, not seeing failures as failures, but seeing them as learning opportunities, and sharing the learnings so colleagues won't do the same mistake. And then that's very much connected to the fourth value, which is that we work together. So at Crealivi, we don't have any one-man show or woman role at all. We're all dependent on each other. No one can do anything without the collaboration and support with other people. And this is really about the diversity, right? How we can, we have all these amazing people with these different backgrounds and competences and experience, and we need to find ways of working together. We need to collaborate. We need to listen to each other. We need to support each other. And this is very much the communication, and why we emphasize the communication and work so much on it every day, because this is what will make us succeed. So that's the four core values. And then, you know, we have leadership competences related to this. So we're really taking it a step further. But the core values, that's the glue in our organization.
I think this is so interesting. I saw your point and you were going for a question there as well. And I just jumped in front of you. But I think, Anna, that what you are describing so very well is that I think many also people in this room can, you know, maybe have stepped into an organization with existing values or values that needs revising for some reason. And to get them to really be part of the company, to be part of the DNA. I mean, the process that you're explaining, we can imagine that it obviously wasn't like that from the very start, that it has taken time. What can you just give us some insight into that process? Have you tried different things out? Like, where can we implement values in a good way? Where does it work? Where does it not work? Or what has that process been like?
Yes, I think you always have to try, right? And you never know if it will work. That's for sure. That's the only thing you probably know, is that you never know. So I think it is a lot about daring to try things, experiment, take on discussions, and see how it works. Because if you go in and say, like, well, now we're going to change it for real and it's going to be forever, it will be really challenging and tough, and you will have resistance in the organization. But if you go in with a more open mindset, and, you know, should we talk about this value? Should we tweak it in a way? What can we do? Let's try it and see how it works. Then usually people are positive to that. And I definitely believe that we've learned, I think that we have grit value, for example, is something that grit was a very popular term, and it's all about growth mindset. And we used grit, and we also say we have grit. Maybe it should be more like an active verb, as we act with courage, you know, and we put the patient first. And also sometimes grit can be confused by grittiness, like working 24/7. And that's not at all what we want. We're really thinking about growth mindset as working in a smart way, not working in a hard way. So then we've had to take the discussions on what do we mean with grit? Can we be better in defining it? And that's actually ongoing discussion. And it might be that we will need to see if there are other values that would work better. So being open for feedback, and also taking the, you know, when people ask questions about it, listening in and understanding their perspectives and seeing how we could do it instead.
I think it's really inspirational, Anna, to hear the level of detail.
Yeah.
You know, we see that a lot with misunderstanding of employer brands. Certain employer brands, target groups can misunderstand as a cool employer brand, as a strong employer brand, simply connected to their product, right? Spotify is a great employer brand, and indeed many can agree on that. It is not because of their product. It is because the level of detail put into the work, as we hear you explain it with Crealivi here as well. So really inspirational to hear that. And one final question from my side before jumping into a couple of questions from the audience. We have a lot. How do strategic goals impact your core values? Do they? Can you see them changing over time as your strategic goals change?
No, I think that if you need to change the values every time you change or pivot the strategy, then you probably don't have the right values. Again, values are the foundation. This is like you have the foundation of the house. You could repaint the house and you can build out in your veranda or something. You will not fix the foundation. The foundation is there. And it's the same thing with values. Like the values should be able to remain in organization regardless if you change strategy. So if you constantly need to rethink the values, that maybe there are not the right values. The values should support us in executing on the strategy so that we can reach our goals, right? But it's all about the behaviors we believe will create a strong and resilient organization that can work on the strategy and whatever will come, you know. And there's been like pandemics, political decisions, things are, it's a lot of ambiguity, it's a lot of changing directions, but with a strong foundation, we as an organization will be able to handle that. That's what it's about, and that's our view.
Really great insights, Anna. And once again, I think like the level of detail really comes across. Like if you want to create a value-based culture, you have to have this sort of mindset that you're explaining. So if we could get your top 3 recommendations for the attendees in this room on how to successfully, if you would, not necessarily if the way it sounds to you, successfully, like try out. We might fail, we will try again. At the end of the day, we're hopefully successful. But how could we develop our core values in times of growth or change?
I mean, I think the first one is make them sticky. Like make them easy to understand. If you can't explain them, maybe, you know, you need to rework the values. So make them sticky, repeat, communicate, over communicate, make it visual, use them everywhere. Really the stickiness, I think that is so important. And then second is don't confuse values with culture then. So the culture will evolve and change as we add on people and as we add on diversity and as we get new perspectives, but the values should remain. And then the third one is really to communicate and lead by example. So really not tolerating employees not behaving in line with values, not compromising when you hire, you know, really leading by example oneself. So believing in it, communicating it and showcasing and demonstrating it, recognizing when people behave as per the values or, you know, call out in a nice way when they don't. So this is the third, I would say.
Well, I mean, really insightful, and Anna, thank you for sharing this. And so, of course, interesting to follow you guys as you keep on growing. And I think we all now know the in-depth work that you guys put into developing the culture and the core values. So thank you for sharing that. Daniela, what would you say about that talk?
Well, first of all, wow, Anna, what a journey you have been on. And I really enjoyed hearing about how your values and your culture have been essential to recruit the best talent and the right talent. And also, I was really inspired since we talked about this before, the workplace, the physical workplace being the facilitator of culture. Well, you using the digital technical tools to facilitate your culture, I think that was really inspiring. So great talk. I really loved it.
Thanks.
And I thank you very much for your talk here today and for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So I think that we want to get the perspective on this from the audience as well, because it's really interesting when it comes to core values, right? We've heard it how Crew Live successfully works with theirs, but it would be interesting to get an understanding from the audience as well. Are you and it will come, a poll will come up there. Are you open to changing your core values as your strategic goals change? Is that like an absolutely no? We haven't really thought about it. Please cast your vote to just get a feel for the temperature in the room, because we can imagine that this is quite different in different organizations.
Absolutely. We know it's a debated question. It is really, and answers are coming in, and we have 60%. Yeah, going down 50%. Saying absolutely open to changing the core values. If the strategic goals change, and really interesting to see your answers coming in with 25% of the room, 1/4 of the room saying no, haven't really thought about it, 1/3 of the room. And as we see, a debated question, the strategic goals and the values and their relation.
And I think this makes sense, right? That this can be different in different organizations depending on in which phase they're in which industry they're in, and how what the strategic goals look like. So it's interesting to see that it's that even between the different choices. So really interesting, guys, to get that perspective.
What do you say? Last talk.
I think so. I can imagine how quickly time flies. But yes, we are moving in towards our final talk for the days or for the day. And guys, I mean, just imagine an organization of about 24,000 employees with an annual employee turnover rate of 30%. And then imagine that very turnover rate, it cannot be changed, and it should not be changed. And on top of that, the organization in question has that strong culture, encouraging organizational attitudes, behaviors, and practices from the very first day that new recruits join, but also all the way up to top level management. And imagine that organization competes for its junior talents with the options of traveling the world, studying or taking language courses in a foreign country, at least pre and post what we've all experienced in the last 1.5 years. And as if that weren't enough, the external perception of that organization has historically been male-dominated, masculine, and quite homogenic. Now, can you think of such an organization? And we would be surprised if you could not, because it's obviously in the slide there. But can you, as an employer branding professional, imagine such challenges with an employer brand? And the Swedish Armed Forces, they have faced that challenge, and they have accomplished a massive turnaround in the perception and communication of their employer brand throughout the last decade.
With progressive campaigns pinpointed to specific target groups, the Swedish Armed Forces have changed the perception of themselves across the whole population. And as an organization open for all with an important mission worth defending. We don't always march straight. A flag worth defending. Come as you are. We leave Sweden in peace. Are just a few examples of their powerful messages that have echoed throughout Swedish society for the past 10 years. So, how did it start? Who had the courage? How do they pinpoint their audience, and what has been key? It is our pleasure to welcome Christian Edman Freudenthal, Senior HR Strategist from the Swedish Armed Forces, to the Employer Branding Summit. We are more than happy to have you here. Christian, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Nice
Great
to
to see you, Christian. So, I mean, yeah,
you.
let's just dive straight into this, because this is so interesting. So there has been a really massive shift in the Swedish Armed Forces employer branding communication over the last decade, really. So how did that start, and why did that shift start?
Well, it started because in 2010, Sweden decided to no longer apply the law of conscription, and this was a part of the professionalization of the Swedish Armed Forces, and therefore the Armed Forces should be an all-voluntary force. This meant that men should no longer be forced into the Armed Forces, and it also meant that if conscription would be applied again, it would include men and women. So when in becoming an all-voluntary force, that meant that the Armed Forces overnight became an even larger employer and the largest recruiter of young Swedish men and women. And for that, we had to adjust for the war for talent. And this not only meant the recruitment of many, but also the retaining quite a few.
And so I mean, I find it so interesting, because your situation is, of course, very unique in that regard, that you've been misunderstand me correctly, but supplied with talent due to conscription, the mandatory enrollment of people in the military services, and almost overnight that changed. So how did you go about then thinking about this? How did you even approach that situation?
This is quite a big transformation, and there were different opinions about, like, some people didn't think it was much of a difference, but in fact it meant like people could leave on a daily basis and you can force them to stay anymore. And there were many opinions on what to do and how, but to be frank, no one really knew and what challenges this meant. So what we could see, we needed to change the mindset from inside and out to outside and in. We had to build knowledge, and within HR, we cooperated with the marketing, and we launched quite an extensive market research project in order to understand. And this meant, besides the key findings this project supplied us with, we also realized the need for a systematic and continuous work or approach to branding and market research, as well as both in marketing as well as within HR. And the systematic work with branding and market research made way for like a platform-based management. At this time, there weren't many directions in this area, so things were very much up to our agency when creating communications, for instance. And with the research in mind, we also made way for a systematic way of reporting to top level about how things were going. And they realized that, for instance, trust, knowledge, and interest among the citizens were disturbingly low, and that they realized something had to be done. So therefore, in 2014, they started to work with the Armed Forces brand as a whole, and this landed in 2016 in a brand strategy for the Swedish Armed Forces.
And we know you've also, although we've understood that this has been a priority for many people in top management throughout the Swedish Armed Forces, we've understood that it was increasingly focused on, as you in 2015, you had a new Supreme Commander joining as well. How did that affect things? Because we could imagine that as a CEO would like to, you know, do her or his contribution to the company and the way we move forward. What was that like? You were in the midst of this brand strategy work and a new Supreme Commander joined you.
Well, the new Supreme Commander is a very charismatic person, and probably not the stereotype you would see or believe would be in the armed forces. And he had a much more firm approach to improving the citizens' perception of the Swedish Armed Forces. And that is quite an important thing, since it's increased knowledge, trust, and interest is not only important in terms of recruitment, it's crucial for citizens' willingness to defend Sweden. And this is important not in the least because there's a changing security environment with rapid tech development, and some less democratic countries use disinformation to destabilize society as a part of their security policy and military doctrine.
Yeah.
So therefore, a lot of stuff that we do are addressing recruitment, but we're always bearing this in mind.
So, Christian, you mentioned previously your close collaboration with marketing in this, and also looking at different target groups. And you are very famous for the progressive campaigns that we mentioned in the intro. And we've understood that you conduct in-depth analysis on your specific target groups on which they are based. So how do you work with understanding these target groups that you have?
First of all, we have like a general target group for recruitment, and that's young men and women, which is divided into 4 different segments. This is something we've created ourselves. And besides that, we have specific target groups for different business areas and skills. And also we have a systematic approach in which we, over like a financial year, do surveys, reviews of certain target groups, for instance, young people. In this, we include our own surveys, as well as annual reports that we buy. And the surveys that we do, they're done by an external market research agency. And for instance, over a year, we track our brand externally, like a brand tracking. And in this tracking, we can follow different target groups and their perception of Swedish Armed Forces as a brand and as an employer. We review this on a quarterly basis and annual basis, and includes also, of course, campaign assessment. How do they perceive us? We also track internally. We also do employee surveys, exit surveys, and so on. We buy different reports on certain target groups that fit our purpose. We also have different research projects that we finance at universities and so on. And furthermore, we do on-demand market research. And this is, I think it's quite interesting for HR. Like, market research has always been a key element in marketing, but it's quite an adaptive tool within HR in solving problems, challenges, or need to approach new target groups.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
No, go on. Please go on.
No, I was just curious, since you conduct these researches and look into your target groups continuously. Do you see big changes, or how often do you see big changes?
Change doesn't happen very fast. It takes a long time. For instance, when we started in 2010, people didn't even perceive the armed forces as an employer, and that we can see now. We are perceived as an employer, so that's happened over like a 10 years period. Another thing is, it's a male organization with over 100 years of history of men doing their military service, and in 2010. If you would ask people who would the armed forces be in kind of a person, that would be a quite dull male, middle-aged white man. And today we see changes in the picture of the armed forces as a person, where we see smiling people, younger, and we also start to see women as well as a part. So, but it takes time.
I think that description is just so powerful. I mean, just really putting an understanding into what these sorts of campaign messages do, of people's perception. Very, very interesting to hear you explain that, Christian. And I think many people in this room attending here today want to create successful and impactful employer branding campaigns, but maybe do not necessarily know where to start. You know, you might have the feeling that we should do something, we should communicate our employer brand, our culture, but we don't really know where to start. And we know that you guys, the Swedish Armed Forces, have developed a pretty clear and effective process to do that. Would you be able to take us through how you go about when you develop that?
The short answer is you should always ask yourself the question: is this a communication problem? Really, is it a campaign that you need? But you have to identify the goal. What's the effect you're looking for? What strategic goal does this help? This would be the starting point for any campaign with us. It's important to understand the target group's drivers and barriers in relation to your own brand, because understanding that is fundamental for the communication that you have to develop. And finally, we always evaluate the effect of our campaigns, and we use it as an input for the next campaign.
And
sorry, go ahead.
I know, because if we can just go through a bit of a shorter example there, because I know you've explained to us when we had a talk beforehand that, like, exemplifying with fighter pilots, for example.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that so that we understand the methodology?
Okay, it's a somewhat longer answer.
Okay, we'll try to make it short due to the time.
Yeah. But we have somewhat of a process that we start with, like, what do we need and what do we have? Like, what do we need tomorrow? For instance, we need more fighter pilots. Okay, what do we have today? We have an aging workforce. Like, pilots are retired. So how did it work out yesterday? Like, how does the process work in recruitment, for instance? We see fewer and fewer candidates. And what is our concept of today? Like, what concept would be, what are the qualifications of becoming a fighter pilot? What do we offer them? And how is the recruitment process? How does it work? What effect does it give? And this would land in a strategic outline. And for fighter pilots, that would be recruitment of pilots has to be much more efficient. And this we bear with us in the next step, where we work with the target group step. There we work both in an internal perspective and an external perspective. Internally, we would ask, how are we perceived as an employer? In this case, that would be among fighter pilots. And how is the concept perceived? Like I talked about what we offer and so on by our employees, and in this case, among fighter pilots. And what are the characteristics of the employees that we have? For this instance, fighter pilots. What do they not look like, but what do they feel and prefer, and so on? And we also ask them, like, who are we competing with? With this, we go over to an external part of this step. We probably do some kind of job market analysis about competition and how this business area is developing and so on, labor market. Then we would recruit a target group that we interview based on the qualifications and characteristics in mind. So you could say we somewhat recruit potential fighter pilots, and ask them. And we ask them the similar type of question: how are we perceived as an employer, both in general and while recruiting? How is our concept perceived? Who are we competing with? We find out what their drives and barriers are. And for fighter pilots, we saw that we had a very high barrier in perceived qualifications. People thought, it's so hard becoming a fighter pilot that I won't even try. It's like everyone wants to be a rock star or a football professional, but you're not going to go for it because you don't think you have it. That was one part. And the other part was we had a really lousy candidate experience.
Honest.
So if we bear with us that in the next step, like what's the strategic focus and planning, we realized like we can't start with communications. We have to start with changing and developing our recruitment process, because otherwise we would communicate with people saying them to apply and they wouldn't apply because it was really lousy. They didn't understand. So that's what I meant earlier. Like, is this a communication problem? And of course, you have to plan for implementation and follow up and so on. But it's what we see is really important when we do this is it's one thing to do plans, but really have to do it, come to action and actually do it. That's when you see and evaluate this and see how it works out.
I think we can all agree that's highly insightful in how you guys analyze every single step in the candidate journey like that. And I think we can also recognize from our own teams employers that want to start out with communication right away, but that they miss out on, you might have an old ATS system, or you might have it's not that uncommon to have, between 4 to 5 to 17 steps for a candidate to apply. And you guys recognize on that, and you saying literally then lousy candidate experience, or lousy application process, of course, that needs to be handled as well. Sorry, Danny, go.
And I agree, Charlie. And I have to say, well, of course, fighter pilots isn't for everyone, but candidate experience is. So it's great that you have revised your methodology.
But Daniela,
there.
if you listen into Christian, it's not as difficult as you might think. So you can still apply.
Could we have a fighter pilot at Oddwork?
It would be
maybe?
great. Well, we have you, so it's all good. But Christian, we'll move on to just your top 3 recommendations right here. If we want to pinpoint a target group in the best way, what would you say? What would be your top 3 recommendations to do so?
I'd say you have to be clear on who do you want to recruit, both in general, like what kind of company are you and what kind of people are you looking for, but also within specific areas, because in one business area it's not the same need as in another business area. So you have to have specific target groups for different business areas. And you have to decide which is most important for you, because you can't do everything at once. You can use, the other one is to use customer journey or candidate journey. We worked a lot with customer relationship management, and this is an excellent tool for mapping and evaluating crucial interaction points along the candidate journey. And it's traditionally used in sales and marketing, but it's an effective tool within HR as well, because you can use it for enhancing your recruitment process and gives you concrete to-dos within HR, for instance, and communications. And the third one is be curious and bold. If you have facts on your hand, you have ammunition to handle skepticism and criticism, because people always have opinions. Because they think they know, like I talked to my neighbor's son and he said, and you always have to handle this.
Yeah, and I think, I guess you've gotten some feedback on the picture we can see below. It says for our English-speaking guests, typical girls. So I guess you've had comments on that.
Sorry, do you want me to comment on that?
No, I guess being bold and curious is like, trying to do new things.
Yeah.
Stand out.
Christian.
Yeah, if you want to get through to your target audience, you have to, because they won't listen.
It's I think for many of us very interesting and to get these insights into how you create these say highly appreciated and edgy campaigns as well. Poyan, what would you say about that talk right there?
Thank you, Christian. I mean, the whole being systematic focus, the customer journey, being curious and bold, we've seen those examples for the last year. So, and the whole description of the very clear process that you took us through, also much appreciated. And thank you for joining us here today. And great to hear the story behind the journey. It's been inspirational to follow for us throughout the years also. So thank you very much, Christian.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And we are almost 2 hours in the summit. And what do you say? Let's summarize what we have talked about today. A good session, hasn't it been?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic session. So many insightful perspectives today. Yeah.
Really, and I would just love to take you through the recommendation that we got from our speakers. Therese talking about there is no going back to the old. Talking about creating office spaces, not just for the employees, but also including customers and partners in co-creation areas, creating a culture of values, empathy, and role modeling managers. Anna talking about making the values sticky with great examples, and very just inspirational to see the level of detail. Also, the communication and leading by example on management levels. And again, Christian's inputs on being systematic, customer journey, candidate journey, being curious and bold. Thank you to all of our speakers here today. Great session, hasn't it been?
Very, very great. And wow, so many great insights and hands-on recommendations from our speakers today. But before you all get to work in your own organizations, please keep an eye out for our feedback survey that will be sent out shortly after this event. And this is where you will be able to tell us, of course, what you thought about the Employer Branding Summit, but also you will have the opportunity to win a 6-month free trial of Life Inside for your company. And many of you have been asking for a summary and recording, and yes, it will be sent out after the event.
It will be indeed. And with that, guys, we are really reaching the end of the Employer Branding Summit this time, and we hope that you have enjoyed this session and that you have gained both hands-on knowledge and inspiration for your own upcoming employer branding activities. If you do need help in any way with your employer branding or recruitment initiatives, just reach out. We are here to support, and we do hope that we are able to invite all of you to a hybrid version of the summit with both physical and digital presence moving forward. We'll see. But until then, we will continue with our employer branding summits such as this one, and also our employer branding talks, the shorter format digitally, and we will use your feedback to make each event even better and more value creating.
Indeed, we will. And before we close the shop, we would like to say a huge thank you to the whole Oddwork team all over the world, making our job so easy throughout this live event. You know, no one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. And behind this digital scene, there's an orchestra of Oddworkers making it all possible. So thank you, all of you. To our speakers, Anna, Christian, Therese, thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights. And finally, to everyone out there joining us today from all over the world, thank you for putting your trust, energy, and inspiration into the Employer Branding Summit together with Oddwork. Looking forward to see you soon again. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.